This is definitely the most dedicated crabber I've ever met. Got hit on the head with a head of ice the night before. A wound the size of a bowl. In the middle of the night, he begged the captain to arrange work. The captain was reluctant because of safety concerns. But he kept nagging. The captain couldn't stand it. I had to put the kid in the crab pot. It's a perfect example of what we can do. It's been 2 months since the end of the crab season. Dutch Harbor is covered in snow in January. The captain, who was on holiday, received an urgent message. The annual fishing season in the Bering Sea is about to begin. Fishing season, as the name implies, catches everything but king crabs. The catch is not as big as the 3-year crab season. They're not that far apart anyway. At the same time with the fishing season in the Bering Sea. And then there's superstorm El Nino. Its arrival will lead to a gentle Bering Sea, into a frozen hell of roaring waves. On board the Lady Harbor in Holland Harbor, the sudden ringing of the emergency assembly bell, and Jacob's cries woke the sleeping crew. The sleepy-eyed crew grabbed their overalls and headed for the captain's room. Bree, the last one to arrive, hasn't picked up his uniform yet. Once you've got your coveralls, please don't point your butt at me. Rick's really pissed off about the situation. Emergency alert, and people are late. And a full minute late. You know, emergency alerts are about lives. Rick gave the crew a scolding. Tell Jacob to get his overalls when you're done. Bree was upset when he didn't scold Jacob. It's not fair to just call Rick out. Sounds like the kid's being a little unreasonable. Jacob was just waking them up, and then of course, Rick fired him. Rick said afterward that he never joked about safety, nor will they tolerate crew jokes about safety. And this time, it's more dangerous than ever. It used to be the height of a wave. There's ice in the waves these days. There will also be slippery ice on the deck. Let's wrap up the story of the lady. The picture came to the old white side. He says the price of snow crabs has risen. At $7 a pound, it's the highest it's been in years. It has also attracted a lot of young captains, and a bunch of old guys like White to grab 8.6 million shares. To avoid taking your share by these new, hard-headed captains. So he's looking for a captain who's been out recently. Ask about crab populations in the Bering Sea. Yes, that man was Anderson. Suddenly I saw that the boy had gained a lot of weight. Anderson was given a quota of 140,000 pounds. Before Anderson could say a word, White was here. The two exchanged pleasantries for a while. Then Old By asked him if he had ever been to the western region of the Bering Sea. Anderson just said, I've been there. Anyway, no matter what White asks Anderson, he does it. The old white guy drove off in his pickup truck. The vain old White had to call Anderson's boss. The boss gave him the spot when they made the deal. 360 miles north of Dutch Harbor, the Witch. Keith is a sly old den, if I may say so. He started crabbing before anyone else got out to sea. It's just the cold, causing a thick layer of ice to form on the ship. So the crew had to de-ice it at night, and against the occasional waves. Because the environment is too bad. Plus the crew broke the ice pretty good. Keith is going to drop the test cage right here. When we get this information out, the crew concentrated on clearing out the crab pots. The elevator can also be used when placing crab pots. Suddenly, a huge wave forms on the left wing. Keith immediately told everyone to take cover. Then huge waves hit the ship. Keith was busy asking what was going on. The crew hurried in the direction of O.J. Keith put the boat on autopilot and scrambled to get down. By this time, OJ was already unconscious in the arms of the crew. The crew then takes the unconscious OJ out of the crab pot first. Keith on the way called out to the crew, don't make a move. Let him handle it. Just got here to check OJ's vitals. OJ woke up right after he said that. Look, OJ's life is not in danger. They all worked together to carry OJ into the house. I was careful not to knock OJ on the road. Once inside, put him on the couch like OJ asked. Then asked for some basic knowledge. Keith was relieved to see OJ's answer. It's just the look in my eyes is a little weird. Then take off your hat. There's a bloody hole in my baby's head. Then Keith wiped the blood away with a tissue. The crew went back to work when they saw nothing was wrong. It doesn't look like a big deal. But Keith still doesn't know if OJ is okay. After all, OJ's character is very tough. You don't usually get your heart out. The picture came to Nathan. He has only been back for 2 weeks. I received word that the fishing season had begun. I didn't want to go, but I didn't expect to get a good application. That's when I decided to head to the Bering Sea again. Nathan arrived at the port during the conversation. This time he plans to bypass the snow crab fleet, straight to the mysterious species he applied for. When we get to the boat, the bait is all cod. You know, the area they're headed for is infested with sand fleas. And cod is a favorite of sand fleas. Plus the creature isn't very interested in cod. This time the cod is a dog repellent. Nathan immediately questioned Ralph, who was in charge of purchasing. Ralph promised no sand fleas. If he had, he would have eaten it. But then again, it's all bought. You can't spend money for nothing. Try it. The wizard then sailed out of the harbor. The picture came to the old white side. He did a lot of maneuvering to lock down an area. He then set sail for the Bering Sea. See, old white set off. Anderson is not far behind, and we're going to go after him at full power. Let's go back to the lady. Rick found Bree. Rick told Bree why he was so angry. Bala Bala just told Bree not to leave. At last Bree agreed to work well too. Persuade good Brillick to let the anchor. Prepare to head for the waters you've set for yourself. There's an accident waiting to happen. The chain suddenly jammed while the anchor was being hauled in. When Rick found out, he rushed over. That's where Bree, the engineer, comes in handy. After an inspection, it was found that the gear was stuck. This kind of thing is often very troublesome. We need to take the gears off one by one. It's going to take a day to fix this thing. The lady will have to wait at least another day. 315 miles northwest. They have reached the designated position, and no Titan was found here. The old den turned off the GPS for more cover. So Anderson never found out about White. Don't tell me if the old den is so anxious that even the apprentice. The crew on deck are ready to throw cages. Mr. By said he did so as a tactic, with the crab pot into the sea. The picture goes to the Titan 3 miles away. Anderson had foreseen the outcome of this one. That must be his big win in the game, even though the waves are big right now. But that didn't dampen Anderson's good mood at all. Anderson discovered this area during crab season. There were already a lot of snow crabs on the move. As the crew cast the cage, suddenly spotted a row of floats. Anderson looked at the GPS, and there was nothing near it. Why is there a row of crab pots? I looked up the code name of the crab pot. This float belongs to the northwest. The northwest, 2 miles away. The first crab pot I get is full of big stuff. The excited old White also received a phone call. As soon as I got through, I heard Anderson's sweet words. After all, it was the key to Anderson's victory. When he hung up, Anderson went out on deck. He told the crew he was going to set up a perimeter. It's like holding up a line on the water. Whenever a boat wants to come, I get caught in the crab pot rope on the propeller. Serious results directly lead to engine scrap. This approach can be said to hurt the enemy 1,000 and cost 800. After all, you can get caught up in it if you're not looking. That's what it looks like. Then the crew began to prepare. The scene returns to the harbor of Holland Harbor. The lady's anchor tray is almost ready. We're almost done with this barrel of hydraulic oil. Rick can't wait to go crabbing. After installing screws and other accessories, it could be used normally after testing. Rick then set out for the Bering Sea. Finally, let's hear Jacob sing. It's northwest of St. George's Island. Nathan's going to use tuna heads and codfish as bait. Nathan is a luxury, if I may say so, but the creature's favorite is squid. It's just the next best thing. Finally put the can in the box, hanging from the crab pot with the cod. Then the crab pot goes into the sea. The picture goes to the witch in the eye of the storm. I can't worry about Keith calling OJ up. How about asking about OJ's injury? Any swelling, tingling, dizziness, trance? OJ's answer was no big deal. This statement immediately confused Carl. Hit him in the head with an ice cube the size of 2 fists. I haven't had a day to go back to work. I've never seen anything like this before. Keith heard OJ say that, so I sighed and agreed. You know, this OJ is a real professional. With OJ on deck, the crew began fishing for crab pots. Run with the take-up machine, the crew blessed the first cage dance of the season. As the crab pot rises to the surface, the harvest did not live up to everyone's expectations. A full basket of crabs pours onto the sorting machine, big and clean to the delight of the crew. Run with the take-up machine, a second cage of crabs gradually surfaced. The harvest was very fruitful. I think it's only worth a year's pay. It's probably a wave of hands for those of you sitting here. Test cage fishing complete. The crew officially throws the magnetic crab pots 120 miles southwest of the house, thief. We're about to solve the mystery of the creature. There's not even a hair on it. The bait was wiped clean by sand fleas. This gave Nathan angry frown. The second cage is still bare. There's no mystery creature, but there's a box of sand fleas. Remember what Ralph said earlier. Now he's going to make it happen. One bite is not enough. Another bite is tough. As much as Nathan enjoyed the performance, but they still faced the problem. The picture came to the lady. We followed Captain Rick in a prayer. Prayers are said, and the crew begins to release crab pots. Clueless, Rick prayed to God. The picture goes to Nathan. He's going to put the crab pot in. This deep trench looks like an underwater volcano. Then the crab pot goes into the sea. The picture comes to the Titan. The crew is laying out the final steps of the plan. Use the crab pot to draw out the thread. So we're done. The picture is coming to the northwest. As soon as he got close to the crab pot, Old White noticed something was wrong. I can't believe there's one near my own float. The crew on deck reported the Titan floating. Old White looked and found a rope. In an instant, the old white fox understood everything. He knew Anderson was angry with him, but he didn't think he'd do it in such a vicious way. After all, the rope can damage the engine if it's rubbed wrong. So the old white is ready to go ahead. Give this rope back to Anderson. Then the crew pulled up the rope. Then Old White set the trap again. Anderson's only path. We're on the lady south of the storm. The weather is getting worse here. Rick said it must be a Category 9 typhoon. The crew on deck cast the anchor hook. As the take-up machine continues to run, a full cage of crabs was pulled up. That's why the bigger the storm, the more expensive the crab. The crab falls into the sorting machine like a waterfall. All rich and fat, and full of gay love. Bree had an accident while they were sorting. The fall hurt an old wound in his back. He's going back to his room now to rest. When Rick saw this, he went down immediately, go to Bree's room and ask about his condition. I saw he was okay and went back. But Rick had a sneaking sense that Bree was exaggerating. Jacob on deck said he hated Bree. He always takes a break for the slightest thing. Leave his work to the rest. The crew on one side just hooked up a tractor to the crab pot. The wave broke the tow rope. It makes Rick's little mouth feel like honey. A tractor is a device that pulls the crab pot up. I want to apologize for the mistake. First to the thief. The crew is fishing for crab pots. Turn with the take-up machine. The mysterious creature in the crab's cage is about to be revealed. The crab pot leaks out of the water as the take-up machine forces. The moment the crew saw the crab pot, they cheered. Yes, the creature Nathan captured was the golden king crab. This breed of king crab compares to the common king crab. It's firmer and more silky. Most importantly, there are very few of them. Life in the sea is also harsher. These are more expensive than regular king crabs for a variety of reasons. Nearly double that, and it's $700 a pop. 2 cages of 40 can fetch $28,000. This is way more promising than my job. Excited crew out again hook. It looks like a good harvest. What kind of crab is this? This is clearly underwater gold. But luck won't always be on their side. It wasn't long before the crew noticed a hole in the crab pot. Even the crabs were scalded. 5 of the crabs in this cage are cooked. That's when Nathan realized, what the hell is this, like a crater? This is clearly a crater. Even this cage of crabs has been burned. Nathan the genius had an idea. Since these crabs like warm water, then why didn't he throw a cage around the crater? Although there is a risk that the crab pot will burn, but just grab a cage of crabs, then buy 10 more crab pots. The crab pot is then thrown into the crater. The picture came to the lady. The wind and waves here are getting worse. Rick made a plan. It's a guy tied to the arm of a crane. Get him to the root of the tractor and remove the abandoned rope. And hang a new rope. That sounds simple enough. But if you shake this big thing, it's gone. Of course, a dangerous mission was given to poor Nit. Nit climbed the crane and Jacob tied the rope. Actually, Nit didn't want to do it anyway. But Rick offered him a 20% raise. The crane goes up, and if something goes wrong, can't even scream for help. Every second seems like a year for Nit. It's a good thing Nit is careful and steady. Completed the mission in one piece. 316 miles northwest of the Titan. The crew cast the anchor hook. Anderson is still smug about his cleverness. He felt that Old White must not dare to come again. But the Old White saw through everything. Drive with take-up machine. A full cage of snow crabs is pulled up. The crabs on the sorting machine are like waterfalls. I can't close my mouth if I'm happy for Anderson. The second cage on board the Harvest is also wow. Anderson was in the right place this time. The third cage of crabs is a waterfall. The crew were all excited and even confused. But the good news is followed by the bad. A rope suddenly appeared on the sea. That's exactly what White had planned for Anderson. By the time Anderson realized it was too late, the alarm gave off a high-pitched explosion. He had to ask the crew to salvage it. See if he can get it. Turns out it doesn't pull at all. Anderson didn't know what to do, did he? All I can do is blame myself. Why can't you remember where your trap is? The picture came to thief. The crew cast the hook. Take-up machine slowly force. This cage of crabs is an angel. 42 adult crabs were born straight away. You know, the average king crab has a high yield of 30. 40 of these golden king crabs are out there. What's not a crabber's paradise? The second cage of crabs is still productive. Pour it on the sorter. It's too much. Nathan's regretting it now. I only applied for 130,000 pounds. 200,000 pounds if we keep looking. Frame 320 miles east of the lady. Snow is already blowing here. The tractor won't work even with a new rope. They must return to port now. Check to see what exactly went wrong. The picture came to the Titan. They didn't get the rope out all night. Anderson consulted with the crew. It was decided to use the riskiest option. Just crank it up to maximum power. Just snap the rope. Only if it fails, Titan's engines will simply be scrapped. Just do it and pull it all out. Good thing it turned out okay. Anderson says it like it is. Never deal with White again. But the Old White Harvest in the evening still received a call. Anderson sincerely apologized to Old White. The two reconciled. After all, there's a friend at sea. It's always better than having an enemy. Dutch Harbor on the other side. The lady is repairing the machine. Rick called Bree to the captain's room. He was fired after a little greeting. After all, no one likes a lazy employee. That's the end of this video. For the rest of the story, the captain and his crew. What other stories are there? Do you want to know what happened next? This guy is definitely the saddest crabber in the Bering Sea. At night, the crew slept with fish. This guy's the only one who's stuck to his post. Just about to pull out the crab pot. I almost got a concussion. It wasn't long before the harvest. Just having fun for a while. Got slapped by the take-up machine again. I looked up, and my face was almost disfigured. Had to go to the captain's room to ask for leave. Not only does Captain Blackheart not give holidays, and a backhand PUA guy, the boy is fooled by a face of confusion. Another day of rushing to be a cow or a horse. The picture came to the Titan. with Anderson describing Superstorm El Nino. It has strengthened to a Category 9 typhoon. It will be quite a test for all the teams. Thief, 250 miles northwest of Dutch Harbor. The crew danced a traditional Irish dance to pray for a good harvest. Nathan was so amused. Nathan thinks this is a good place to cage, because the crew danced here. All I can say about that is you. The crew cast the anchor hook. Take-up machine slowly turn. Although a Super El Nino is far from here, but there's a sneaking tendency for this thing to head this way. It'll only take 2 days at this rate. Nathan will be hit by El Nino. There's a 600-mile wide low pressure. If that happens, then Nathan will have to run. He doesn't want to be hit by a 25-foot wave. All Nathan could do was pray to God. Turn with the take-up machine. The crab pot is slowly pulled out of the sea. The moment the crab pot is pulled, the hanging hearts of the crew finally died. You don't even need a sorting machine for this one. Jonathan said this time of year, Golden King crabs migrate west en masse. But this crab moves very fast. How difficult it is for a boat to catch a moving crab. It's like when your goddess suddenly declares her love for you. So we have to rely on the stupidest methods. Bit by bit searching for crab nests. During the conversation, a second cage of crabs surfaced. Good. There's only one in a cage. The crew said the harvest was not good, but at least the boat didn't break down. For a long time, according to his words, there were many accidents. Nathan had already begun to pray when he heard this. A pot of crabs just pulled up. Nathan is worried about going to that body of water next. The cool fork boat gave them a surprise. The crew saw what was happening and hid, so I don't get caught in the crab pot. The photographer hurried to catch up with the engineer. Should I say this photographer is really dedicated? The crab boat lost power and followed the engineer. Nathan in the cockpit is freaking out too. Keep everyone away from the rickety crab pots. Fortunately, the engineers were able to fix it in 2 seconds. The crew only came out when there was light on deck. Nathan was relieved to see that the crew were all right. Nathan's boat has jumped the lock twice. Why don't we take it to Holland Harbor for maintenance? Nathan then asked the crew if they were hurt. The crew responded with approval. 48 miles north, storm edge tighten. Anderson's having a meeting with the crew. The general meaning is that they're heading for the eye of the storm. The weather will be very bad after that, but it can't be helped, bala bala. If the storm is too strong, everyone can get under the heater. When the storm gets better, Anderson will call everyone out, then ask the crew if there is any comment. The crew is known to have a problem with it. Anyone with a problem has been thrown out to sea for the fish. The crew then put on their gear. Anderson is now 12 shy of his goal of 14. This is all because Old White messed up the plan. Now he can only gamble on the eye of the storm, although the crew wouldn't dare call Anderson to his face. But behind his back, Anderson's been sprayed with a sieve. Anderson's target this time is a sacred site. It's this pit that looks like a snowman. Arrange 80 crab pots on the east and west sides. But before we do that, we need to get the crab pot out. With the take-up machine slowly force, the waves came crashing down. Anderson wanted the crab to be a surprise. Then the crab pot is slowly pulled up. In theory, this is a surprise. After all, a surprise is something beyond expectation. None of them is a pleasant surprise. The storm grew stronger as the ship moved toward the center. The crew packed up the crab pots and headed to the lounge. Anderson said to stack crab pots on the bow. It can stabilize the ship's balance well. In the process of finding the crab pot, the crew enters the dream incense. The bell rang without accident. Only Lando, who was on guard, came out when Anderson was still trying to figure out where everyone was. The sudden wave knocked Lando's men upside down. Fortunately, Lando was not seriously injured. Because of how Lando got hurt, Anderson turned his anger away from nowhere on the crew who slept in. The crowd was scolded before they responded to care about Lando. Anderson thinks these guys have had too much to drink. The alarm was so loud that no one came out to help. Lando was terrified to recall what had just happened. I don't know, Landon's lucky. It's no big deal to be hit by a wave like that. The scene returns to the harbor of Holland Harbor. The crew of the Lady are packing crab pots, so their hoist is fixed. There's no engineer on board since Bree was fired. So now Rick is looking for an engineer. You can apply for a job. $100,000 a year for all customers. And Rick was hired on short notice and had very low standards. If you can fix it, you can move it. So why don't you go ahead and apply? Well, Rick's hiring brought in a big guy. He says he's been a crabber before, but there was a camping trip, picked some mushrooms in the mountains, and then he went to jail in a blur. I got fired by my former captain anyway. In the middle of this conversation, he arrived at the port car park. The photographer is quite dedicated. I got shot all the way before I even started. On the Lady, Big Han and Rick exchanged pleasantries. Then Rick asked the big man to tell him about his work experience. The hand said he is from 19 years into the line. He was fired by the captain last October. The reason I want to find a job is that my son's birthday is coming up. His wife never let him see their son after he went to prison. This is just to make money for my son's birthday. The story worked for Rick, a father. Then he was shown around by Jacob, and the crew welcomed the new crew member. The Lady went to sea again after a long journey, 214 miles northwest of the Thief. Nathan hasn't found a single hair since yesterday. Now the pain are ready to throw a cage at the edge of the storm. The crab pot carries everyone's expectations into the sea one by one. Nathan needs to get in front of the storm, surrounding the huge island below. Put 40 crab pots and make sure the feed is fully volatilized. The crew is now luring the 8th crab pot and discuss whether they will meet one piece in the storm. When the crew is happy, there are unhappy things. Nathan suddenly realized the steering wasn't working. The whole person's suddenly confused. It's neither too bad nor too bad. Only when the storm finds you. The next overhaul, Ralph, let the old white do not move. The crew came up to report the damage and asked Nathan where the repair manual is. Who knows Nathan lost the repair manual? The crew was speechless. Nathan said the situation they're in, like a duck floating on the water, waiting for the hunters to harvest them. Carl comes down and tells Ralph there is no repair manual. Well, now they're going to have to find it themselves. If they can't fix it in a day, Nathan's about to make an expensive call to SOS. The following maintenance of the people found. Cornering hydraulic line is broken, but there are no replacement parts on board. This is turning Nathan's beard white. Nathan had to drive on until it was fixed, in case a storm comes and knocks them over. The lady 52 miles northwest. The crew is releasing crab pots. The new big star's not really fitting in. The lady was no less stormy than the Titan. Rick chose to avoid the other ships this time, crabbing in a place he's never been before. The place where the crab pot was dropped was a deep ditch. The new crew on deck was a little confused. It's a little confusing to even lose a float, but the weather is pretty good right now. Night is the beginning of the new crew's nightmare. Suddenly, Rick quickly warned the crew to be careful. The new crew doesn't seem to understand what's going on. Suddenly, the waves came like a flood and a monster. The new crew was knocked upside down. Nit hurried over to inquire about the situation. Except for a little fainting, I'm fine. At any moment, Rick calls up the new crew, asked him if he was okay, and asked him if he was fit to work like this. Bala a lot of crap. A few words of final concern sent him down. Then Rick picked up the radio and told the crew to be careful. Bala is probably about caring. Just pay the crew a little more. I'm a good worker. With the crab pot into the sea, the Titan at the center of the storm. Anderson has another meeting for the crew. There are 3 key points. Careful. The non-point is not to sleep. The last time it happened, the pay was deducted. That's about it. These waves on the Titan are no joke. A 20-foot wave hits and rises in place. Anderson knows how to find a place to send one away. After what happened last time, Lando was promoted from crew to deck chief. The wage rate has increased by 20%. Then the crew cast the anchor hook. The crew hopes the harvest will live up to them. Then the crab pot slowly rises to the surface. Pull it up and see the harvest is surprisingly good. On the sorting machine, I counted more than 30 of them. Then the take-up machine continues to rotate. This cage is worse than the last one. It's pretty impressive when you dump it on the sorter. All pearls of fat body, fat gay, love full. It would be an accident if it didn't happen. Langdon fell to his knees in pain. It broke the face of his face. The thought of disfiguring yourself before you get a girlfriend. Langdon could only vent his anger on the ground. Anderson couldn't say much when he saw Langdon like this. Had to remind the crew again to pay attention to safety. He called Langdon to the captain's cabin. Asked about Langdon's injuries. Take a flashlight and shine. Baby's got a couple of cracked teeth. Anderson said if Langdon couldn't handle it, fishing boats can leave when they make a delivery. Go to the hospital and come back the next time the fishing boat returns to port. Without thinking, Langdon said he was fine. This Bean Landon guy is a real deal. Anderson said to give Landon a day off. Just wait until the take-up is fixed before you go back to work. Southwest of the storm, aboard Thief. Repair work is still in full swing. They haven't found the right hose yet, so Nathan decided to put a 2-inch hose. Make it a 1-2-inch hose, although it may leak some hydraulic fluid. But the hydraulic tanker is full of them. As we speak, the crew is about to begin operations. Another 2 hours and Nathan was ready to call SOS. The crew had good news. Ralph down there has Nathan try to steer. After turning on the turn switch, Nathan pushes the handle and the hull turns. The problem that had been plaguing Thief was successfully solved. The crew returned to their posts. Nathan asked the crew where the bad luck comes from. The crew said they didn't know. Keith believes that knocking on wood can ward off bad luck. The deck crew also learned to knock. Nathan felt much better after knocking on the wood. The work began in earnest. Turn with the take-up machine. Nathan believes they can pull off a bumper harvest. The crab pot rises to the surface and looks good. Even Nathan can't keep his emotions in check with this harvest. This crab is a feast for the eyes. A large pot full of king crabs pours into the sorting machine. Then the crew cast the anchor hook again. The crew could hardly contain their excitement. From now on, they are out of trouble. Nathan gave us a dance. This ocean is a paradise for golden crabs. The lady 38 miles north. Rick couldn't handle a few days of sleepless nights. Put the autopilot on and get Jacob on duty. Gave him instructions for half an hour. He's afraid Jacob's nervous will wreck his boat. After all, the Bering Sea is not what it used to be. Then he went back to rest. The alarm went off before Jacob's ass got hot. The new engineer Tile Creek hurried to repair. Jacob said that the sewage device was blocked. Then Rick came up and asked. Jacob gave us the details. Check it out on the tile creek. Someone lost a wet wipe in the bathroom, so the sewage plant is blocked. Then Rick had him take it apart and fix it, but Tile Creek said it was better to replace it directly. Rick suddenly felt that the boy was not a good man. Whoever has a clogged toilet, just replace it with mats. A subsequent remark by Waxy was even more outrageous. You know, the most important thing on a boat is trust. Rick can't stand him smearing people like that. Soon after, Waxy repaired the device. Rick says he's always admired Tile Creek, but his words had already sealed his fate. That's the end of this video. For the rest of the story, the captain and his crew. What other Waterloo is in store? Do you want to know what happened next? Everyone's known to show affection on a crab boat. There will be a sea penalty, but this young man is not convinced. Here with his phone, showing off his girlfriend. I can't believe I just showed off. The crab pot is full, so this guy floats like hell. Stand directly beside the boat and let the water out into the wind. The sea saw that he did not pretend, and that just broke the guy's hand. Even the bones are dried out. I don't know if that's enough to applaud love. The temperature dropped to freezing as the typhoon approached. What's worse, a storm is coming. If we don't catch the quota in 5 days, the ship will be covered with ice. By then we'll have to turn back. The captains took a breath. We're on the northwest at the edge of the storm. The crew are fishing for crab pots. The result was a surprisingly dismal harvest. Old White began to wonder if the crab pot was leaking. It could be just the 2 crabs. The crew cast the anchor hook again. Old White said such fine weather will not last long, so they have to make the most of every second. Continuous output with take-up machine. The crab pot is coming to the surface. The harvest of this cage did not disappoint. Old White says catching crabs is like a game. You know it's there, but it won't let you catch it. If only he could get in the water now. He must teach these crabs a lesson. In the middle of the conversation, Old White called Clark up. White decided to let Clark tie a crab pot to the boat. The cage opens and drags around the bottom of the sea. Old White said it was to test for crabs. By the way, White ordered a crab pot from Norway. The old man is a little forgetful. White is putting 43 years of crabbing experience on the line. Bet this canyon is full of crabs. On deck, the crew are rigging the crab pot. First tied with a big chain and then tied with a rope. That's pretty much done. Old White ordered the crab pot slowly into the sea, even though White doesn't think it's a good idea. But right now, there's no good way. The crab cage northwest also slowed down. The main thing is that if we run any faster, the rope will break. The crab pot is slowly sinking to the bottom of the sea. The boat dragged the crab pot slowly. The crew's hearts grew heavier. With the Old White take-up machine slowly rotation, the crab pot slowly rises in anticipation. No accidents, nothing. Seeing this situation, Old White was speechless. But the old den didn't give up. The ship was redirected. Let's get you guys another shot with the crab pot sinking to the bottom. After 10 minutes of dragging, Old White ordered the salvage to begin. With the take-up machine slowly force. White prayed as long as it wasn't empty. There are not many crabs in the crab pot, but this test cage only needs crabs. Well, then the harvest won't be so bad if you cage around here. The crew were all very excited. After all, that's all you can get. Who would be unhappy? The old man is laughing like a monkey. After sorting out this bunch of crabs, the crew worked together to remove the iron bars. Bait all the crab pots. With the lift power into the arms of the sea, the view goes northwest to the Titan. The weather here in Anderson is not so good. He said the nearest waves were 15 feet high. The point is that the waves are still carrying ice. You can kill a man with one blow here. So let's do it before the waves get too big. Throw the rest of the crab pots in the boat. Drop it here at the Yeti. Anderson gets up to 8 against the big waves. It's a risky thing to do, though, but there's no way around it. After all, they don't have much time left. In the face of such a desperate captain, the crew has long since started frantically greeting their families. Braving waves as high as 20 feet. The Titan was sailing at twice its usual speed. Despite this, the crew remained at their posts. I took advantage of that sentence to get my money or die. Compared to the crew on deck, Anderson was worried about the Kino on the crab pot. There's ice all over the crab pot. If my foot slips, better be careful in your next life. The crew threw the crab pot into the sea. Everything is fine as far as it goes. But at this point, it would be an accident. The crew drops the crab pot step by step. Suddenly, a big wave hit, and Cheeto almost fell. Anderson's little face is white with fear. Another wave hit. Then Anderson looked and saw that the Cheetos were gone. The crew quickly approached and shouted Cheeto. Anderson's spooked walkie-talkie forgot. When the crew didn't respond, they climbed up, yelled Cheetos on the loudspeaker for Anderson. After all, this is no joke. It could have killed someone. Right under the tension, Cheeto came out the back like no one else. Anderson was relieved that Cheeto was okay. The crew on deck gave Cheeto a scolding. Anderson later said it was an inadvertent moment. Cheetos just disappeared without a trace. He thought Cheeto had fallen. That's why he was so anxious to call Cheetos. After all, a fall on a crab pot can kill you. Cheeto came down from the crab pot as we spoke. Anderson just wants it to be over soon. On board the Wizard near Dutch Harbor. Keith parked the boat here for delivery. This landscape is also very beautiful. After communicating with the port personnel, we are ready to depart for delivery. The crew then went to the bow to collect the anchor. Keith said the delivery was at a cannery. The factory is full of ships all year round. If you go any late, you have to wait for 34 hours. He doesn't want to delay the last quota. But strangely enough, just as I was about to pull in the anchor, the wind grew stronger on the sea. It's dangerous to weigh an anchor in a strong wind. Keith looked at the situation and became worried again. But we haven't had any accidents yet, have we? The crew suddenly found that the anchor was stuck, then asked Keith to move a little to the left. Keith didn't hesitate to start the engine. Just as everything was working, the windlass stopped. The crew shouted to Keith that the anchor had fallen. Keith looked busy and stopped the engine. The crew dared not lose a moment. Grab the anchor hook and throw it on the float of the anchor. Keith was glad to have a float on the anchor. I wouldn't have found the anchor if I hadn't hung it. As soon as the line is fished out, the take-up machine is hung up. When Keith saw the situation, he asked the COB to take command. After all, there's a 4-ton anchor, a bad one, and the rope will break. Under the command of Keith and the COB, the anchor gradually came out of the water. The anchor is about to board as the crane forces. Keith was now afraid the rope would suddenly break. Luckily, nothing went wrong again. Keith was relieved to see the anchor land safely. He then called the factory staff, asked about the current queue. Staff said there were about 8 boats lined up right now. It'll take you about 8 hours. Another day to think about anchor repairs. Keith lost a few of his few hairs. 210 miles north of Dutch Harbor, the lady. Jacob's excited. I don't know what he's excited about. Rick says it's been a tough season. The rain hasn't stopped since crabbing season began, and we still have a lot of quotas to lose. I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. Now we can only hope that the crab will obediently climb into the cage. I'm fishing for 40 crab pots here tonight, so it was meant to be a sleepless night. As the storm grew stronger, the crew is up for the challenge. But then Rick realized Ty was gone. The camera rolls around, and there's this kid squatting in the corner. Introduce your son's favorite toys to the photographer. Looks like a model car, but don't know what brand. And Bala Bala told funny stories about her son. Jacob cast the anchor hook from the deck, turned with the take-up machine. Ty is back at his post. There was a cheer when the crab pot came out of the water. The quality of the crab in this cage is terrifying. Not only is it over the top, but it's also full of juice. A cage of crabs made Rick happy, fishing the second cage without stopping. And that's when the unexpected happened. Nate took over when Ty got hurt. Rick couldn't help it after he asked for details. Then the simple disinfection of Ty came to the captain's room. Up close, most of his fingers were broken. It's even leaking bloody bones, a big part of what causes injuries. He got sloppy on the crab pot. There's no way we can fix this on a boat. Can only return to port for treatment. Because he returned to the Ty heart very guilty. Then Rick calls Jacob to the infirmary. Have Jacob fix Ty's finger. It feels like the ship is falling apart without Jacob, because we can't find a proper bracket. Jacob decided to use frozen corn intestines as a scaffold. In the process of preparing the tools, Jacob also said, "It happened to me a lot when I was younger. Put a brace on it." He knows his way around. Ty on the side also holds disinfectant water to disinfect. Put your hands flat in front of Jacob after disinfecting them. Jacob took the skewer and put it on Ty's finger. He then took electrical tape and wrapped it around the outside. Ty went back upstairs to rest when it was over. It's morning. Rick looked at Ty's finger. The antibiotics were then taken out. I'm going to give Taylor a shot to prevent infection. How can you look at this big man and still be afraid to get a shot? Ty couldn't even speak after the shot. Look at this. It's kind of a shadow. Rick says it's time to get back to Dutch Harbor, in case Ty's fingers die. In his opinion, yesterday's harvest was good enough, just in time to pick up these fish. 80 miles southeast-northwest. Old White is ready to salvage the crab pot that he threw away yesterday. With the crew cast the anchor hook, Old White said this harvest is good. Their crab hunt will be over. Forced with take-up machine, the crab pot on deck looks like a good harvest. Old White felt there were about 50 of them in the cage. The crab pot is open, and the crabs are left like a waterfall. There were 86 of them, half as much as Old By Chai. The second pot of crabs came up just as well. Everybody's big, fat, big-headed, and gay, and full of love. If the next crab pot keeps going like this, they can return to Hong Kong in less than a day. 84 miles northwest of the Titan. The crew is busy and in full swing. They're not just cold here. Sometimes the waves are as high as 20 feet. But there are 80 crab pots. The ice will be all clear in no time. The crew is ready to start fishing for crab pots. The crew hurled the anchor hook. Anderson prayed to God for a good harvest. Turn with the take-up machine. The crab pot is pulled out. The harvest looks better than the Old White harvest. The crew counted the cage at a terrifying 170. You know, the normal harvest is around 40. This cage is 4 times the normal amount. Suddenly, a huge wave hit. The rocking of the hull of Cheetos is a direct result of a flat fall. Anderson quickly asked if anything was wrong, but I'm glad Cheetos didn't have a problem. Anderson suddenly realized that the steering didn't work. Let the crew know there's a big wave coming. Fortunately, the crew ran fast. No one was injured as a result of the wave. Anderson then sent engineers to check the tail. They can only draw circles in place without turning. When I got to the cabin, something jammed the steering. Anderson jokes about getting tangled up in a rope last time. Something got stuck again this time. I was born unlucky, blessed. The engineer checked and asked Anderson to turn left. It takes a lot of effort on my part. Got the board out of the steering jam. After a test, can be used normally. After the repair, the crew began to work normally. Anderson says he has 2 more days. No difficulty can stop him now. 196 miles southeast of the Wizard. They've been in port for 2 days, but they didn't unload the crab. Keith just made contact with the port. The harbor needed him to steer the boat to the red light. Keith had already figured out what to do next. Just when Keith was happy, White called. The old White nearby asked Keith what he was doing. Keith isn't telling the truth either. You can tell Keith isn't stupid if he doesn't say it. These two kind of ran into each other. I said yes. But old White hands are honest. This gives Keith a mad greeting to old White and let the crew remove ice to run faster. But this was laughed at by the old White. Sure enough, Keith was left behind by White's new boat. Just arrived, old White picked up the phone stick face ridicule. Keith is so pissed off at old Den. The crew then opened the hatch. The Northwest managed to save 8 hours. Keith managed to waste a day. The picture goes to the west side of Holland Harbor. Todd just got checked out of the hospital. I'm a little confused why Jacob has a comb in his head. The doctor at the hospital told him, this is serious enough to require treatment in a major hospital. Jacob then drove Ty back. The lady just finished unloading crabs. Rick says the crabs won't even cover the fuel bill. You can say that there are no underpants left. Next comes the earnings report. Witcher first, $319,000 for a 2-day delay. But it still can't drown out the shine of Keith the Wizard. Titan 2, $310,000 is pushing hard to catch up with the Witch. Third place Northwest. The top 3 are all about the same at $300,000. The fourth thief, $220,000, looks like Golden King crabs are tough to catch. The back 3 are pure soy sauce. The fifth Mariner, 6th place the Summer Bay, 7th Lady Number. These 3 put together don't have as many as Rogue. That's the end of this video. For the rest of the story, the captain and his crew. What other stories are there? Do you want to know what happened next?